good for me, cause it's all about the feeling. Every time I get it, oh, I won't forget it. You're blessing me, Lord, I need the recipe. Oh, I'll be right back here tomorrow on hands and knees, cause it's all about the feeling. Every time I get it, oh, I won't forget it. You're blessing me. Of your medicine, good for me, cause it's all about the feeling. Every time I get it, oh, I won't forget it. You're blessing me, Lord, I need the recipe. Oh, I'll be right back here tomorrow on hands and knees, cause it's all about the feeling. Every time I get it, oh, I won't forget it. You're blessing me.
Summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Bend down, isn't it a pity? Doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city. All around, people looking half dead, walking on the sidewalk harder than a match here. But at night it's a different world. Go out and find a girl. Come on and dance all night. Despite the heat, it'll be alright. And babe, don't you know it's a pity the days can't be like the nights in the summer, in the city, in the summer, in the city. Cool town, meeting in the city, dressed so fine and looking so pretty. Cool cat looking for a kitty, gonna look in every corner of the city till I'm wheezing like a bus stop, running up the stairs, gonna meet you on the rooftop. But at night it's a different world. Go out and find a girl. Come on and dance all night. Despite the heat, it'll be alright. And babe, don't you know it's a pity the days can't be like the nights in the summer, in the city, in the summer, in the city. Doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city. All around, people looking half dead, walking on the sidewalk harder than a match head. But tonight it's a different world. Go out and find a girl. Come on and dance all night. Despite the heat, it'll be alright. And babe, don't you know it's a pity the days can't be like the nights in the summer, in the city, summer, in the city.
Looking to save on car insurance but don't want to deal with the hassle of switching carriers? Meet Branch Insurance. Branch offers stress-free switch and save. See your price in seconds at GoBranch.com. Better yet, when you switch to Branch, we'll break up with your current carrier for you. Simply visit GoBranch.com to start saving today. That's GoBranch.com, or give our U.S.-based agents a call at 833-427-2624.
bucket lists are back on, and it's time to make a break for it with the 16 diverse brands and 6,000 destinations at IHG Hotels and Resorts. Let us host the perfect family reunion at a Holiday Inn location. Get that girls' trip booked at a Kimpton Hotel, or help you take that bucket list escape at Intercontinental Hotels and Resorts. And with lots of rate options, it's definitely time to explore. You're so ready for this, and so are we. Visit ihg.com/ready.
Swish and Flick is a Harry Potter podcast. Explore all 7 books and journey into the wizarding world. New episodes every Sunday. Tap the button to start listening to Swish and Flick free, only on Spotify.
We come into this world unknown, but know that we are not alone. They try to knock us down, but change is coming. It's our time now.
Hey, everybody loses it. Everybody wants to throw it all away sometimes. And hey, yeah, I know what you're going through. Don't let it get the best of you. You'll make it out alive. Oh, people like us, we gotta stick together. Keep your head up, nothing lasts forever. Here's to the damned, to the lost and forgotten. It's hard to get high when you're living on the bottom. We are all misfits living in a world on fire. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us.
Hey, this is not a funeral. It's a revolution after all. Your tears have turned to rage. Just wait. Everything will be okay. Even when you're feeling like you're going down in flames. Oh, people like us, we gotta stick together. Keep your head up, nothing lasts forever. Here's to the damned, to the lost and forgotten. It's hard to get high when you're living on the bottom.
We are all misfits living in a world on fire. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us. You just gotta turn it up loud when the flames get higher. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us. They can't do nothing to you, they can't do nothing to me. This is the life that we choose, this is the life that we lead. So throw your fists in the air, come out if you dare. Tonight we're gonna change forever. Everybody loses it.
Everybody wants to throw it all away sometimes.
Oh, people like us, we gotta stick together. Keep your head up, nothing lasts forever. Here's to the damned, to the lost and forgotten. It's hard to get high when you're living on the bottom. We are all misfits living in a world on fire. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us. You just gotta turn it up loud when the flames get higher. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us. We are all misfits living in a world on fire. Sing it for the people like us, the people like us. You just gotta turn it up loud when the flames get higher. Sing it
for the people like us, the people like us.
It's UUCC Zoom-In live with special guest Shirley Nelson. Here's your host, David Kantor, with special guest, with co-host Will Barrett.
So Will, you're our special co-host tonight, man?
Apparently so.
Hi, everybody. It's David Kantor here. Glad you're with us here this evening. Please say hi to our special co-host, Will Barrett. Say hey, Will.
Hello, special audience.
So Will, Will, this audience is a particularly special one. I noticed who is in the audience this evening. We actually have big-time international travelers with us tonight. Joanne Orr, who's been over all the universes in our audience tonight, and fresh back from Armenia is Allison Bastion. So, so we've got some big-time travelers with us this evening. I saw the Stimperts there tonight also. They've been all over the universe also. I myself recently got back from Lorraine, so I feel like I'm part of that group as well.
A very well-traveled man, huh?
I take pride of it for my travels to the West Side and stuff. So, Will, you just told me before that you have a job this summer. What are you doing this summer?
I do, in fact, have a job this summer. I'm currently working at the concession stands at a Progressive Field.
So, So do you get to get assigned to a different stand every night? You work at one stand routinely. How's that work?
Well, I've only worked 2 days because typically my schedule is based on the home games. So if they don't have a home game, I'm not working. But from what I've been told, they're typically switching around the employees since we're understaffed because of COVID-19.
Uh-huh. So wait a second. So when the Indians are out of town, you're not there working?
Nope.
Okay, just checking. Okay. That's the way to get some efficiencies, I think, huh?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, since you've been working there, so everybody, I'm going to spoil one thing right now. Our special guest this night does not want us to talk about sports at all, but I'm going to slip this one thing in right now before she joins us. Since Will has gone to work for the Indians, they are undefeated. So, Will, you just keep working there, man.
I'll be sure to.
Hey, everybody. So a reminder, if you've not already done so, use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to announce yourself. Make sure you send it to everybody and not just the panelists, because your fellow congregants want to know that you are here.
And if you've been here with us before, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first time with us, we're glad you're here, and we hope being with us every couple of weeks becomes a part of your regular routine. And if you're enjoying yourself, please tell your UUCC friends. The more people here, the merrier. We love high attendance numbers. And another reminder, if you missed a past show, such as mine from a few months back, and want to check it out, they should be available on the UUCC YouTube channel, except for a few because, we got hit with using music without permission. So David has to edit a few of the episodes before they could go on the site, but the other ones are still available.
Thank you, Will. No problem. So, Will, as you know, we have the Jack Ulman Comedy Moment where we hear some jokes from Jack. And as you and I have agreed, Jack's jokes are the one guaranteed moment of levity on the show. So everybody, please welcome Jack Ulman. Jack?
Good evening, David and Will. Good to be with you yet again. As the great Charlie Chaplin said, a day without laughter is a day wasted. I was watching the Masters on TV this weekend, and I remembered my caddy days at Shaker Heights Country Club in the 1950s. I caddied for some great ones, Paul Brown, Joe Heinen, and others. I also caddied for some losers. One day, after finishing a grueling 18 holes with a terrible hacker, the golfer turned to me and said, "Jack, you must be the worst caddy in the world." "I doubt it, sir," I replied. "That would be too much of a coincidence."
Oh.
That reminds me of the mysterious power of prayer and a particularly nosy neighbor of mine named Mrs. O'Reilly. One day while kneeling for Mass, she complained to God. Then unburdened herself. "Dear God," she admitted, "sometimes I just don't understand the wisdom of your ways. My neighbor, that godless slut Angie D'Onofrio, never sets foot in church. is on her fourth husband, which doesn't keep her from entertaining half the men in the parish. Yet she has 2 fine houses, 3 cars, all the jewels a woman could want, and a closet full of furs. Why has she been so blessed and I have not? Because God's voice boomed from behind the altar, she doesn't bug me. Well, that's it for me. I'm looking forward to another scintillating interview with our co-host and special guest, Shirley Nelson. Back to you, David. Back to you, Will.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. So as Jack just mentioned, our special guest tonight is Shirley Nelson, who you probably know as our church congregations administrator. So basically, she runs the place, and thank goodness for that. But like all of our previous guests, there's much, much more to Shirley than that. Shirley is a Cleveland area certified interspiritual compassionate counselor and life skills coach. She's the founder of Sands Sacred Circle, which offers retreats and workshops. For more than 30 years, she has lived an engaged spiritual life through mindfulness and compassion as a speaker, facilitator, writer, and a workshop and retreat leader. So, you know, Will, so I had some folks over at my house the other evening, and they asked me about Shirley and about just heard that she had just been ordained as a minister, wanted to know about her story, what happened, and this person was pelting me with questions, and I just said, if you want to know about Shirley, you got to show up, and you'll be very, very surprised. Because Shirley also offers inner essence serenity sessions to individuals to explore their spiritual journey with the intention to raise their consciousness and deepen their understanding of self and others. She is a recent graduate of One Spirit Learning Alliance in New York, where she was ordained as an interfaith, interspiritual minister. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm UUCC welcome to Shirley Nelson. Shirley, is that you?
That's me. Was
How you
that
doing
really
this
Jack
evening?
Allman?
That was Jack Ulman, but he's gone now.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to protect you anymore. Now you're stuck with Will and me.
Okay.
Unfortunately, on David's end at least.
Now be kind, Will. So Shirley, we usually start off by asking people how they've been dealing with COVID. So how have you been dealing with COVID?
Oh, I just ignore it. You know, COVID it's been very difficult for everybody in the whole wide world. And we can't ignore it. But by the grace of God, I have not had any personal interaction, not even a hint of COVID in within myself or my family, except kind of removed family members. And I'm grateful that none of my colleagues have had it that I'm aware of. So I don't know anyone directly who has been affected by it except minimally.
So
I'm
have
thinking
you
of
been
Melissa
vaccinated?
right now.
Have you been vaccinated?
Who, me?
Yes.
Yes, I have both times.
So how long ago did you do it?
I did it in March. I think one was at the beginning of March and one was sort of towards the end.
So are you doing anything differently now that you've been vaccinated than before you were vaccinated?
Regretfully, I'd say yes, I am. I'm doing things that I hadn't planned to do, which means I've been going out without my mask. And I was not doing that before being vaccinated. And when they gave us like the all clear sign, I thought, okay, well, I can go some places without my mask. But I got caught, trying to think where I was. I went to get my nails done and the girl made me put my mask on. And I was okay with that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's the only thing that I'm doing different.
So, you know, when I got back, after I got vaccinated and the word came down that you don't need to wear a mask if you've been vaccinated, I still get these feelings of not knowing, put it on or don't put it on. But, you know, you go to some places and they say, if you've been vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. Please wear a mask if you've not been vaccinated. And I don't want people to think I haven't been vaccinated, you know, so there I go. So I end up walking around without my mask in most of those places because I don't want people to think I'm not vaccinated. Will?
All right. So we're going to get a little more deep and talk about your personal history. So as me and David have been made aware, you've done a lot of moving, a lot of geographical changes in your lifetime. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you can remember about your family life growing up.
Well, I was born and raised in Cleveland, and I lived in Cleveland up until my early 20s. My family is all from Cleveland, and my siblings are all here. My parents are gone. My mom died last year at the height of COVID. And let's see, I have 5 brothers, a sister, some nephews, nieces. I don't get to see them very much, my nieces and nephews. And my siblings and I are overdue for a reunion of sorts, since we really didn't get to do anything to celebrate my mom during the pandemic. And so we're now kind of looking at how we're going to do that this year. Trying to think, what else would you like to know? I was raised up in the Glenville area, and I've been married and divorced, no children. Went to college and went to Capital University. I also went to Notre Dame, and I went back to school late in life. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree in 2003. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So as we already know, you have recently been ordained. So it's safe to say that religion plays a significant part in your life. So if you could give us a little more detail about, was church a major part of your life when you were younger, and what faith did you practice growing up?
That's an interesting question, Will. So church was a major part of my life. Out of 7 children, I was the only one they made go to church. So when I say they, my parents. And I was in church a lot as a sort of like a performer. Whenever there was a play, I was in it. I grew up to become like the secretary of the church. So I attended a lot of funerals because I had to write the obituaries and I had to read the obituaries. And I kept the church records, and I did that until I graduated from high school. So I was involved in church probably from the time I was 8 years old until I was 18. And then I made my escape. And yeah, so that was a Baptist church that I was born and raised in. But I was aware, even as a child, that I identified as a spiritual person more so than a religious person. And interesting enough, I ended up working at a church for a good part of my life at the headquarters for the United Church of Christ, which is a religious organization. And then I moved over to Unitarian Universalist. I didn't know all of this was moving me towards the ministry. I guess it was just an atmosphere that I felt comfortable in. And when I went to One Spirit, it is a school in which the seminary is no denomination, it's interfaith. And the belief is simply that we respect and honor all religions.
I could definitely get behind that. And as David and most people who knew me when I was younger can tell you, I was also the child at church who was performing frequently in many different services, and when we still did them, the musicals. All right, but before we move on, well, I'd like to ask one more question. What was the biggest lesson you learned growing up that you more than likely still apply today?
It's a really good question.
Boy, well, that's 2 of them now. Jeez.
Yeah, you're batting 100. Let's see. It was kind of like a double-edged sword. I was taught to respect my elders, so to respect authority figures. And I came from a family in which my father was the head of the household. He was very strict, and I had to learn how to speak up for myself when I became an adult, because I had learned that lesson so well. Because to me, respect authorities or figures of authority meant you don't say anything. But, you know, of course, I've come to learn that that's not true.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that one. I've had to learn that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you've always been such a shy, retiring type, Will, and really just deferring to authority all the time. That's been your way of doing things. Yeah. Not
Happens.
So Shirley, Will and I talk like this because way back when Will was a mere youth and he was going through rites of passage, I was back when I was taller than he was. This goes back a lot of years. Will, when Will went through rites of passage, coming of age, I was his mentor then, and
Yes.
it'd be fair to say that even back then, Will thought he had more to say than anybody else did. But never mind, that goes back a few years.
I mean, that still applies now.
Yeah. Well, no one's surprised about that. So Shirley, after you graduated from high school and stuff, I recall you mentioned to us that you left town for a while. Where did you leave and why did you leave?
Well, I left Cleveland in 75 to move to Los Angeles. And it was a time in my life when I just wanted some adventure. And so the adventure came in the form of a crazy boyfriend with a motorcycle. And so the invitation was to move to Los Angeles. And I said yes and amen, because I was tired of the snow. I wanted a different life. And I just thought Cleveland just felt so vanilla at the time. And I just wanted some more juice, something more flavorful. And I sure did get it in Los Angeles.
So what'd you do while you were out there?
A lot of bumming around. I worked. I was blessed when I moved out there. Before I left Cleveland, I was working for TRW. And TRW found me a job in Los Angeles at Redondo Beach.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
And it was really fascinating to move from Cleveland and to have a job in Redondo Beach, right on the water, doing secretarial work, but yet in a fabulous environment. So when I moved there, I worked for TRW for a while. And then I changed jobs. I worked for Magnavox. And I had several different jobs in the time that I was there, which was a little less than 20 years. The last couple of jobs I had were my favorites. And one was with a commercial real estate company. And then my last job as a corporate person was with American Golf Corporation. I love working for the golf course. I love the benefits that went with it. We were given permission to utilize their fancy clubs, at a really deep discount. And I worked with some wonderful people, really wonderful. It was a family-owned organization. And while I worked there, I was also working as a real estate agent, a residential sales real estate agent. So I spent a couple of years selling real estate, and then I had some challenges, health issues, and I moved back to Cleveland in 92.
So that's how you got back here.
That's how I got back, kicking and screaming.
So when you came back to Cleveland, was that something that you say kicking and screaming? I was about to ask you that. So was that something you welcomed doing? Or were you saying, oh crap, I got to go back there?
Had an interesting conversation right before I left. One of my neighbors, when she found out I was moving back to Cleveland, she looked at me with this really strange look, and she goes, "Why are you going back to Cleveland?" And I said, "Well, that's where my family is." And with this recent challenge that I had health-wise, I feel like I've been hanging out here with not all of my parts covered. So I need to go back and be with family. And she looked at me and she said, "You're family oriented?" And all I could think is, I don't know what she'd been seeing, but I just said, yeah. I said, I'm somewhat family oriented.
So talk to us a little bit more about how you, how the Spirit got to move you. So you were not 14 years old when you opted to pursue ordination. Talk to us a little bit about that thought process and about when did you feel the call? How did you feel the call? What happened? How did all that take place?
So that's what I would call a spiritual journey, David.
Yep.
And I actually felt the call when I was 11. My mom worked as a day worker, and she would go and clean people's homes. And I would go with her. And while she was cleaning, I was in her client's library reading books. She didn't care. She just wanted to know I was there. And so I go and I started reading. And I started reading books about metaphysics, New Thought, and the way in which they described spirit was how I understood it. And it was very different from my upbringing in the Baptist church. So I found myself with, I felt like I had a foot on both sides. I had to go to the church because my parents made me, but I had a whole different understanding of who God is and how I related to spirituality and religion. And I knew they were different to me. So that's what started it. And from there, when I did move to Los Angeles, I found churches that supported my beliefs in terms of unity, religious science. And I was still on the fence going to traditional churches, Baptists, so forth, but I also was involved in alternative type churches. I was hungry. I read as much as I could. I attended many, many, many workshops, spiritual retreats, any kind of program the church had to offer that I thought was going to help me to evolve personally and spiritually. I was part of it. And then when I came back to Cleveland, I just continued working on walking that spiritual path, growing, learning, healing, healing from a lot of emotional challenges that I had in my younger years. In fact, I felt LA was the time that I spent growing up. Mm. And so after I got to a place where I understood that I knew a little something, then I became confident that I could help others. And that's when I started what I call my sacred circle and invited women to attend meetings every month to learn about their own spirituality and for me to help them to connect with that. So that's what my sacred circles were about, helping other people to grow, to connect, to be comfortable within themselves, and to recognize that spirit shows up in a lot of different ways, and it may not be in a church. So, like I said, I heard the call early, but when I finally understood it was my turn to actually do something about it, it was after I'd been sitting in the offices of the society, the Unitarian Church over on Lancashire. I had a lot of quiet time because it was usually just myself and the minister. And at the time, Rena was there too, but it was usually just me there. And I had a lot of time to think. I loved the quiet. I loved the peace. I loved learning about Unitarian Universalists through Reverend Joe, through the interim minister that came before him, and through Colin Bosson. And as I learned about it, I realized the difference in UU and the other types of religions that I was aware of. And then when I learned about the school that I ultimately ended up going to, I knew that's where I fit. Mm-hmm. But I began to get a taste of it as I talked to different ministers. And I think for the last 30 years, I was surrounded by ministers, between the ones at the United Church of Christ. I work with a lot of them, and all of the people I've met at the Unitarian Church. And I guess the main thing that I had to come to understand is that ministers are people just like me. And that helped me to understand that I didn't have to be anyone different than who I am, other than to be willing to serve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shirley.
You're welcome.
Will?
All right. So now we're about to get very deep. So, how do I word this question without coming in so hard? I'll just straight up say it. So, how do you view our country's struggles around race and racism, especially when you consider the work that you have done, both spiritually and in other facets of your life?
You didn't come in hard.
I tried not to. Appreciate it.
No, it's all good. The question I've been asking myself about race is, how have we as a people survived more than 400 years of oppression? What is it in us that has allowed us to endure? This is torture. This is torture. This is not living the life, but we do it. And the answer that has come to me is that just like you strengthen a muscle, you go work out and you add five more pounds to your 20 pounds. Now you're at 25, then you're at 30. The thing is that you're getting stronger and stronger, and you're able to endure more and more, but you're still lifting those weights. And so we as a people, we've had a lot of weightlifting to do, and it's made us very strong, very strong. But who wants to go through life lifting weights?
I agree. As how I see it, people, just because a person or a group is strong enough to handle something doesn't mean they should have to go through it all the time. Like, marginalized groups shouldn't have to go through oppression just because they've dealt with it for centuries.
Yeah, they dealt with it because they had to. We've dealt with it because we've had to. And so we've become very strong. And the way it ties in with my spiritual pursuits is that it's just a little thing. But my interest and intention is to help people to become strong spiritually and to become visionaries and to understand that we can hold on to hope and we can create change, but we can do it from a place in the heart so that it's done from a place of love. Now, I don't have all the answers to that, and all I can do is share the love that I have as I speak, as I teach, as I preach, and just try to instill that message in others that the key to all of this, in my humble opinion, is love.
All right. And to go more specifically into that, what are your hopes for how our society evolves around issues of race, ethnicity, and justice? You kind of touched on that a little bit, but I would like to hear your thoughts more about what are your hopes for that specifically?
Well, my hopes really are that we can replace the current system with something that works for everybody in terms of not just having policing, but also having people on board that are able to help those who are mentally challenged. Having people on board who are not just trying to stop the violence by killing and challenging those who are oppressed and acting out, but to be willing to have a conversation, to be willing to have a place for people to go in order to grow, in order to heal. People aren't just acting out for nothing. They're acting out because they're hurt. We are all hurting, and we as Black people are hurting in ways that our allies cannot identify with. But if we have programs in place in which our allies can participate as well to help heal this country, then that is where the change will take place. So we can keep the policing, but we need more than that. We need counselors. We need helpers. We need programs in which people can be engaged. We need art. I think we need art more than anything, because part of me feels that the new spirituality is creativity. And that if we can help people to be creative and engage in activities that fulfill them, even under this oppressive, environment that we're in, it helps people to find some sense of fulfillment and what's the word I want? Dignity, so that they can experience themselves differently. And so I really think art and love, programs in both those arenas. We need a place where people learn how to love. You know, originally churches were for that, but I don't think churches do that these days. So we need a love school. And yeah, I don't know. Did I get you? Did I answer your question?
You answered it perfectly. I agree. We could definitely use a love school. David should enroll for sure. Your first student, front row.
I think my time may have passed on that, unfortunately, although someone said there's always hope for everybody, but we'll see. So Shirley, I'm going to take you out of the meaningful stuff that you and Will are just talking about and take you to some silly stuff for a minute. Those of you who've seen the show before know that one of our things we like doing here is the Colbert Lightning Round, which is based on a segment of Stephen Colbert's late night show, where he basically asks 15 questions that he and his team claim will tell you more about a person than all the interviewing they'd otherwise do. We've pared it down to 9 questions, and we've changed a few of the questions around so that nobody can memorize them, Lori Albright. And so now we're going to go through the lightning round. So Shirley, I want to emphasize lightning round. First things on your mind. So let me take you through these right now. Ready to go? Okay. What's the best sandwich?
Chicken.
What's your favorite movie?
The Blues Brothers.
The trait you most value in your friends?
Their hearts, loving hearts.
What's the scariest animal?
Roaches.
What do you think happens when we die?
I don't know.
What's your favorite smell?
I guess flowers, roses.
Mm-hmm. The living person you most admire?
The living person I most admire. Can I say myself? No.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. That sounds narcissistic, but okay, if that's what you want to go with.
Let me think. Gosh, that's a big one. I'll say Barack Obama.
That's what I would say also, actually. What's the most used app on your cell phone?
The weather.
Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
Interested in going higher.
Thanks. So I have to tell you one funny thing. So Will would have interrupted. So Will is supportive when he does this, and he puts in comments himself. I refrain from that to keep it as a pure lightning round. But I have to say this. When you said that the scariest animal is roaches, I'm sure if my wife, Mary Ellen, is in the audience, she heard that and she started laughing out loud, because where I grew up, there were roaches all over the place. And in the middle of the night, I'd get up and go on roach patrol because I couldn't stand those mothers being all over the place in the places that I lived. One of the places Mary Ellen and I first lived, we lived in a very nice building on top of a restaurant, and the roaches were everywhere. And they figured that we could have the house in the daytime, but at night when the lights were out, the place was theirs. And we had a little battle about that. I think I may have won a couple of battles, but they clearly won the war. So Shirley, I want to ask you a couple more things about you and UUSC. I'm unclear about this. How did you find the society in the first place? How did you end up hooking up with them?
Craigslist.
Oh, is that Craigslist? Is that right?
There was an ad on Craigslist, and they were looking for a part-time person. I had just become unemployed. I like to say retired, but I was late. I just gotten laid off. Some people call it fired. I call it retired, but I just gotten laid off. It was the height of the financial decline.
Well, back in like late 2000s, 2009, 2010.
2010 is when I was laid off. And so I wasn't quite ready to stop working, but I didn't want to work full-time. So I just looked for a part-time position. And that's how I found the society, was in the Craigslist. And when Colin interviewed me, I said, oh, and we agreed it would be my job. I just said, okay, well, I'll be here about 6 months and then I'll go find a real job.
So what made you stay?
I needed to rest. Yeah, I really did. I'd worked all my life. I'd been working since I started working when I was 12, babysitting, working for the church, working at a cleaner's. And then right out of high school, I went right into a job at the bank. And I've worked all the time. And the most I'd ever taken off, and from 1968 when I started up until 2010 was maybe 2 weeks at a time when I could get a vacation. And so when I was laid off, I realized I was really tired. I was exhausted. And some of it was race related, just that whole journey of being in corporate and being a minority and just having to always deal with that. And then the other was just, I just needed a break. And so when I started working at the church, it was quiet. It was me most of the time by myself. I didn't really have to think. All I needed to do was, I could take care of everything very easily. And so I just kind of relaxed into it and said, okay, well, this will be my little sabbatical for myself.
So when you heard about the prospects of the Society and First Unitarian reunifying, how did you view that?
My first thought was right on. I knew a little something about the history. I knew a little something about how the church had broken up in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. And that the church split, and part of the members went to Shaker and some went to Cleveland Heights. I knew a little something about Black people being involved in the church that was left over on Euclid, the Huff area. And when I heard about the coming together, it felt like it was time to heal. And I felt it was the right move, because obviously you can grow better when you grow together. And both churches were losing members, the Shaker Church and the Society. So it just felt like it was time to mend the wounds and to come together. Yeah.
Will?
All right. So Speaking of the congregation, tell us about being the congregation's administrator.
Well, I just got a little chuckle because I saw Mary's chat saying that David got up every night and tried to kill all the roaches. So I was trying to stifle a laugh.
It's okay to laugh, especially if Mary Ellen says something about David. Jokes about David are always acceptable to laugh at.
Hi, Mary Ellen. I haven't seen you for a while. So you want to know about, tell me what you want to know, Will? I forgot.
Tell us about being the congregation's administrator.
This congregation, the past 2 years with the merger?
Yes.
Okay, that's been an interesting journey. So as I told you, I came from an atmosphere where it was basically just me in the building all the time. And I knew everything backwards and forwards as far as the job responsibility. I always felt I was the cook, the janitor, the bottle washer, and the administrator. But I will give credit to having some great custodial help. That his name is Warren Ronnie. And when he did come to the society, he really made a big difference in how he contributes. He still does. But my job did change a lot when the merger happened, because my responsibilities were different. Instead of serving a small congregation of 40, 50 people, we're now talking 200, 300 people. And so the needs were different. And for once, in all the years I'd been working there, which had, by the time we merged, I'd already been here 8 years part-time. But for once, I did find myself challenged. It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I was in school at the time, so the timing wasn't good. It's like, I don't need a challenge now. I just want to continue coasting.
I felt that. As someone who's in school currently, I can relate.
Yeah, I'm like, I got just a couple more years now, so y'all don't get in the way. But it was good. It was good to work around people. I hadn't worked around people for a while, other than, like I said, the minister or an RE person. And so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed learning about the new aspects of my job, doing payroll. I used to be a big complainer when the payroll wasn't done on time at the society. And I'd go beating the drum, the payroll's not done yet. And so now I'm in charge of payroll. And so I like that.
That's how you get your money.
Yeah. And there were reasons why it would sometimes not be on time, but that didn't make me feel good even when it was a good reason, because I just felt people needed to get paid. So that was a challenge when I first took it on. And there was also some growth in taking on the responsibility of the rentals for the church. I had some learning to do around that. So between the rentals, payroll, being part of the leadership council, being around people again, there was all these new challenges, and it was interesting. It was interesting, and I hadn't seen that coming. And then here comes COVID and an opportunity to work from home. And my administrative hat was still just as valid, just as necessary, working from home, because things still had to get done. And they say that the definition for an administrator is one who gets things done. So my experience has been positive. It has been interesting. I have been grateful. And I have felt somewhat fulfilled. It's a part-time job, but most of what I do, I enjoy doing. And I like being the one who gets things done.
We're glad you're doing them for us, Shirley. So, Shirley, we're going to take it to our last question now before we go to break now. And it's the last question we ask everybody. And that is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Compassion.
Superpower of compassion. So you want to have ultra compassion? Do you already have ultra compassion?
I can't claim that. I only know one person that can claim that. And he's been gone a while. But if I had it myself, I feel if it was my superpower, I'd be able to more easily give it to others.
Mm.
So it's not that I want it for me. I wanted to be able to share.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good answer, Shirley.
Everyone gets a piece of the compassion.
That's, I
Compassion
would make
pie.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, gang, we're going to take a brief break now to get your questions for Shirley organized. If you have a question to ask, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and ask it. Do not use the chat button. We'll get things organized for you to ask your questions when we return. But first, our mid-show break with the song We Shall Be Known by Mamuse. This is a cover of the song by the Thrive East Bay Choir. So this is one I think you'd want to hang around and listen to. We'll see you in a few.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
And we're back. So that was We Shall Be Known, written and originally recorded by Mamuse and covered by the Thrive East Bay Choir. Lamuse's two women, Sarah Nutting and Carisha Longacre, from Chico, California. The song was on their 2018 album, Prayers for Freedom. The version we just played right now is from an October 2017 performance at the Bioneers annual gathering. That song and the specific version we played were both requested by Shirley. So Shirley, how did you come across this song?
That song was, I first heard it at my friend's ordination, who became a Unitarian minister last year. Her name is Margalie Belizaire. And so it was her song for the ordination. And then I offered it again as a song for our commencement service. We used it as a background for a photo montage. And so all of our class, everyone in our class was flashed across the screen for about 10 seconds as the song played. And there were about 50 to 60 people in my class.
Great. So enough of background stuff now. Are you ready to take some questions from the audience?
Oh, I'm ready, yes.
Okay, so our first question is from Don Stimpert. Don, you're on with Shirley Nelson.
Okay, actually it's Jackie.
Jackie.
And Shirley, I'm enjoying learning more about you. My question is, how did your 6 siblings manage to escape being required to go to church?
Hi, Jackie. So 5 of my siblings are boys. They're, men. And I have 1 sister. I'm the middle child, so 3 above and 3 below. And I think being boys, none of them were really interested, from what I recall. And my sister didn't seem to be, I don't know if she was interested, but they just didn't take her as a hostage. So I think what happened is my parents must have seen that I had an interest. And so they just kept taking me, and I did not resist, even though I had began realizing that I had a different viewpoint. I still went willingly. So I just think they saw something and wanted to nurture it.
Well, good for them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jackie. Next question is from Lori Albright. Lori, you're on with Shirley Nelson.
Hi, Shirley. Oh, it's so good to see your smiling face and hear your beautiful voice.
And Brian says hello too.
So one of the first projects that I worked on with you and Aaron Justice was doing the photo directory. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I'm curious what your experience of that is. I felt like it was the photo directory that was never going to actually get to us. It seemed like there was just one barrier after the next, and I never understood what the barriers were, but we got it like a year later than we had expected to be. And I was just curious what your perspective on working on that project was.
Oh boy, it's good to hear from you, Laurie. So my short answer is, I just figured they were the same as we were. They was working on church time. But not ever having done a project that involved photos, a photo directory, I had no idea what to expect. So I didn't have any expectations. The only time I had a concern is when we were told it's coming. You will have it next week. And it didn't show up. And so, it was a little disconcerting because many people were asking about it. And because I have no idea what the process is, I didn't have any choice but to wait and be patient and try not to judge it.
Well, it was a pleasure working with you and Aaron, but the process was certainly frustrating. But we persevered and it finally came. Yay.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure working with both you and Aaron. And I miss her too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lori. Next question is from Allison Bashan. Fresh off the boat or plane or something from Armenia. So Allison, we're hoping you'll ask this question in English rather than Armenian. You're on with Shirley Nelson.
Yeah, that would be really hard for me to ask it in Armenian. I'd have to use Google Translator for the whole thing. But no, I'm a little jet lagged still, but feeling pretty good. Shirley, I wanted to ask you, what do you enjoy doing outside of your work as church administrator or spiritual leader?
Hi, Allison. Because I've been in seminary for the last 2 years, and then prior to that, training as an inner spiritual counselor, the last 4 years have been heavily laden with school. And between school and work, it doesn't leave a lot of time for other things. So I found myself turning to the darn television,
sure.
which had not been something that I previously had spent a lot of time with. But I had my favorite programs, Grey's Anatomy, and
good choice.
This Is Us. There's several others, but TV was a way that I used to wind down, and it replaced me reading, because before it was books was how I would wind down, but I had so much reading for school that I didn't have much opportunity to read a lot of books just for pleasure. And movies, of course.
Sure.
Like not just TV series, but movies in the theater. And I also enjoy walking, and walking the labyrinth is one of my favorite pastimes. So that's still a spiritual thing. My whole life is spiritual, Allison. So there isn't much I can tell you that I do that does not have a spiritual connection.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Shirley.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Thanks, Allison. We have time for one last question from Terry Robbins. Terry, you're on with Shirley Nelson.
Hello, Shirley. So I have a question. It might be related to a couple other little questions. But when you came back to Cleveland, did you decide to live in your old neighborhood, or did you decide to go elsewhere? And besides your family, what do you like best about being back in Cleveland?
That's a very interesting question, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the answer I have is, I didn't move back into my old neighborhood, but I did move into a neighborhood that was similar. I moved into a home that was owned by one of my brothers, and it was right smack dab in the heart of the community. Mm-hmm. And I remember my sister asking me, "Are you gonna live there?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. It's not only is it gonna help my brother, but it's gonna help me." So it was kind of humbling, because I had lived in some rather nice places in Los Angeles. The last place I lived was in Santa Monica. And prior to that, I was in Beverly Hills. And so here I was back home and having to humble myself to live right back in the area that I came from, or a neighborhood that was close to it. And I can't remember your other question.
Just asking, what do you like best about being back besides your family?
So when I left, I was pretty naive, and I saw Cleveland as primarily Black and white in terms of race, and very vanilla in terms of the vibe. You know, it didn't seem that there was much happening. But in reality, there wasn't much happening with me. I was just a woman out there trying to grow up and figure things out. So what I like most about since I've come back is I really appreciate the diversity that shows up in many ways. I appreciate the diversity in food, in restaurants, in neighborhoods, and I appreciate the way in which I have perceived race relationships collapsing, meaning I see Cleveland as a hopeful city, as a place in which people are really showing up as wanting to do the work that will be necessary to create beloved communities. And the way it shows up is I can go into a grocery store that's in the whitest area, but I get the most welcome reception. And I can be on the west side, where before I left Cleveland, I would never dare go to the west side because it just felt so polarized and prejudiced. But now I don't feel it at all. So that is what I notice is the biggest change. It's diverse, and it's diverse in a way in which I see it in a lot of places.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Shirley. And thank you all for your questions and comments. So no comments from our audience about the prior show to read tonight. For future shows, if any of you have any comments or questions to share, please send them to zoomin@uucleveland.org. That's ZOOMIN @uucleveland.org. Shirley, thanks for being our special guest tonight. Will, how about our next show? Will, are you on mute?
I'm sorry. I did not realize I was on mute. But anywho, our next show will be on Monday, July 26th, with our special guest, UUC Music Director Mike Carney. For those of you who've been keeping track, Mike was our first guest on the show last August. We consider this our 1-year anniversary celebration show. Yes, we all know it's still only July. I'm not in charge of the calendars here. I just work here. But somehow, David has some logic about a show starting in August, being able to have this 1-year anniversary in July. We tried talking to the man, but, can't get through a brick wall without breaking it. So anyway, join us in 2 weeks when Mike makes his return to our show and chat with David and co-host Claudia Victorov. And of course, you won't want to miss the Jack Ulman Comedy Moment. I mean, who in their right mind would want to miss that? So join them all on July 26th for our next episode of UUC Zoom-In Live.
Thanks, Will. We're running out of show, gang, so let's give a major league round of applause to Carol Gay, our producer. As I say each show, my co-host to make sure that things actually happen. So thank you, Carol. And a reminder, if you'd like to catch up with your fellow congregants after the show, just stay right here for a chance to chat with your fellow UUs. Carol will get you squared away following our wrap-up music. And we're going to leave you tonight with a Jack Ulman song selection, At Last by Etta James. Just like Jack, a definite oldie and goodie. Hang out with us for 3 more minutes, listen to this terrific song, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for the next episode of UUCC Zoom-In Live. Shirley and Will, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
At last, my love has come along.
That is a directory. Oh.
My lonely days are over.
I don't know. I didn't take
And
it.
life is like a song. Oh, yeah. my heart was wrapped up in clover. The night I looked at you, I found a dream that I could speak to, a dream that I can call my own. I found a thrill to press my cheek to, a thrill that I